the Audio Description Narrators of America Know Your Narrator series bonus episode. Today, we're very happy to bring back Bridget Melton. She is an audio description voice talent. She is an audio description writer. And we're also very happy to bring back another alumni of our series, Melody Goodspeed, who is also from AFB Major Gift Specialist. Thanks for joining us, Melody.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us, Bridget.
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk about Hamilton.
Let's start. How do we start this? Bridget, could you give Melody and I just like an overview of your experience in doing Hamilton and some of the things that were happening visually that may not have been so clear just because of the format of the musical?
Yeah, so I spent 3 years living with Hamilton as the audio describer. I audio described specifically the Chicago production that was done by Broadway in Chicago. I was with that show basically almost for the entire run. I wasn't there for about the first 2 months of it. Then the audio describer retired and I took over for basically the entire 3-year run. So Miguel Cervantes, who is now on Broadway, is my Hamilton. He will always be my Hamilton. I just grew to love that musical. I'm not a musical person by nature. I'm a theater person, but I'm not a singer or a dancer. And wow, did that Hamilton production really just change my mind about a lot of things. Something that I really love about audio description for Hamilton is that it is the music, it's a sung through musical. So everything is so set. You can really hone what are the words you're going to use. It's really a big exercise in brevity. And I really liked, especially Miguel Cervantes, God bless him. He was so rarely out for the productions that I called. I did about 30 performances over those 3 years. And so it was really fantastic. Anytime he was on, I could just kind of sit back and I knew his rhythm and I knew where I could fit things in. That was really fantastic. So one of the things, if you've never seen Hamilton, I think a great place to start is Vocal Eyes in the UK has a fantastic audio introduction that they put out. In the UK, they call them audio introductions. Here in America, for a live theater performance, we would refer to it as your pre-show notes. And they have it available. If you Google Vocal Eyes, Hamilton, you'll show 2 different audio versions of it, as well as being able to pull up a large print Word doc of it. So no matter how you'd like to take in that information. And they do a fantastic job describing it. And they really set you up for success for being able to listen to the music and get a sense of what's going on. One of the things I love about doing live description for theater is you get the script. And when I'm reading the script, I'm seeing the stage manager's sometimes you get the stage manager's notes about what the blocking is, but you'll get what the playwright was intending. And sometimes, Hamilton at the time hadn't been published yet. So I'm seeing what the playwright was intending. He's got notes to the actors in there. And it's so fascinating. And I think that can really help fuel your audio description and make sure that you're on the right track. That yes, I'm seeing the visual as they intended. And that helps me describe it in an objective way so that I'm not trying to layer my own thing. Interestingly, the ending of Hamilton was the only moment I really had trouble with. So the ending of Hamilton, I think we all know by now, Hamilton, he passes away. And there's this fantastic moment at the very, very end. It's definitely visually, it's a callback to the opening of the show. Everybody in the opening of the show wears cream colored clothing. And then as the principal characters have been distinguished by their voices and their tales in that opening song, they put on a jacket. Aaron Burr's the only one. He appears in a plum purple outfit with like black piping on it. He's the only one that is visually different. Everybody else is wearing cream colored clothing. Even Alexander Hamilton at the very end, he has said, my name is Alexander Hamilton. And he appears right there in the center of the stage. And he puts on a sienna colored coat. You're like, okay, there's Alexander Hamilton. Other people, you've heard them, but you don't know that that is George Washington. You don't know that that is, you just have no idea what principal character that is. And then they start putting on jackets during that. So in the final moments of the show, everybody's back in cream colored clothing again. They are all just ghosts telling this story. But Eliza Hamilton comes out and she says, oh, can I show you what I'm proudest of? And she talks about the orphanage she started. And then the background dancers kind of part, and there's Hamilton. She's saying, oh, I can't wait to see you again. And she turns around. He kind of pushes her forward and releases her forward. And she looks up and a spot just hits right on her face. And the actress just beams and she smiles and then it's blackout. And it was like, I just don't know. Sometimes I can't approach describing a visual until I know what the visual is trying to do. And Hamilton in Chicago I called it actually from a basement. I'm watching it live, but I'm watching it on a feed from the basement. And that gave me extraordinary access to everybody backstage. And I went on over to the assistant director that was managing the look of the Chicago show. And I approached them and I was like, hey, I'm the audio describer. And I'm sorry that I'm kind of breaking the wall of me being an independent contractor. You're with the show, but can I ask you, what are we going for with this ending? I really want to make sure that I'm giving people the right idea. And she asked me, what does it look like to you? And I said, it looks like he's releasing her towards a light. And she goes, that's awesome. So I love that the ending is open to interpretation. And I can't remember now, in versions that are out there where you can hear the audio description, exactly how they've described it. But it was like, that was the one moment where I really struggled in Hamilton was just, am I doing this one right? There are 3 visuals that, Lord, I wished you could fit it in to the actual show, because I think some of them actually deal with that revolve. The revolve that they've got in the center of the stage, it's about 15 feet wide, and there's 2. So there's a big circle, and then there's an outer revolve that's just a walkway about 3 feet wide. And they can turn clockwise, counterclockwise, or they can turn independently from each other. There is a moment, but Hamilton is saying goodbye to Angelica. So much of the Hamilton-Angelica relationship is visual. You hear some in the music, clearly they've got a connection, but so much of it in the blocking is visual. And so he's saying goodbye to Angelica. He's standing on the central revolve. It's not moving, it's stationary. He has Angelica's hand and the outer revolve sweeps her away. And in his empty hand, Eliza swoops in on that same motion of the revolve and places her hand in his. And you're like, oh, wow, she is hoping she can be enough. She's clearly not her sister. She knows this. And it's this tiny moment, but there's no way to describe it in the show. It happens that if you've heard it even, you just know that this is such a fast-paced show. And so that's a moment that I wish I could let people in on the visuals of Hamilton and Angelica. And the other fascinating, this one is not with the revolve. There's a beautiful moment, and I call it the song Rewind. So you've seen the entire, the Winter's Ball. You've seen it run through from Eliza's perspective. Then you see it literally rewind, and the actors, they're not necessarily moving in backwards motion, but you are seeing them backstep on stage where you're seeing everything just literally, it's like you've pressed rewind on the VHS. And you start going, now you're going to see the Winter's Ball from Angelica's perspective. There's this phenomenal moment towards the end of it where Angelica says, I introduce him to Eliza. Now that's his wife. And Hamilton has been standing. He's downstage left. He's at the head of a row of soldiers. And the soldiers physically have literally moved his head to the side. And they've moved him like a marionette to face Eliza, because what you didn't realize when you were watching it through from Eliza's perspective, you just didn't see, like visually, we've all been blinded by all of these other fantastical things happening in Eliza that we haven't noticed how much Angelica was there. When Hamilton first appears in that song, he's beelining for Angelica, and George Washington cuts in, and none of this is happening verbally. So it's not until you see it from Angelica's perspective during the Rewind song that you're like, oh my gosh, yeah, Eliza's really lucky she called Hamilton first, because Angelica was going to be the sister that he married. But that visual of that line of soldiers moving him like a marionette, there's physically probably about 6 of them that had been in formation behind him that come up around him. One puts their hand on either side of his face and turns him towards Eliza, and the others physically pick up his feet and plant him so that his body faces Eliza, so that Eliza can say, it's a pleasure to meet you. That's one of the most visually beautiful things that they do in the entire show. And then something that I wished, this is a stage direction that's in the script. Towards the end of the show, Philip Hamilton has been in a dueling accident, and there's this the Stay Alive reprise. Hamilton has, they've rushed in. Eliza has rushed in, and there's the heartbreaking moment where he just goes limp on the table, and Hamilton literally, he and Eliza are both hunched over their son. He's on this table. He's just passed away, and Eliza is clutching him so fiercely. She's clutching Philip, and Hamilton tries to place his hand over Eliza's hand, and it rests there for just the briefest moment before Eliza realizes it and rips it out of his hand. She is having none of this. And then the outer revolve very slowly ushers out the entire family towards the back. That's a very shadowy back of the stage. You don't even kind of realize that they're exiting. And that's as Angelica's coming on to sing It's Quiet Uptown. As a side note, I saw that the week that Miguel Cervantes came back after his daughter had passed away. And it was truly just one of the most heartbreaking things I've ever seen on stage, just knowing what this actor has just gone through and hearing him sing and go through It's Quiet Uptown was the most incredibly moving thing. I don't know how Miguel did it. Alexander Hamilton has just been left with no physical compassion from his wife. And nor do I think he needs it. He doesn't deserve it in this moment. And so he's going through It's Quiet Uptown. And then at one point, Eliza joins him. When she comes out, my description is Eliza joins Hamilton, not touching, staring straight ahead, face tear-stained. They are both dressed in black. He turns to her. And that's where he sings directly to her. Look at where we are. Look at where we started. I know I don't deserve you, Eliza, but hear me out. And he's basically just making this plea, stay with me. She literally doesn't look. And I felt really happy to be able to get in. At one point, Hamilton, after that, he says, look around, Eliza. She remains staring straight ahead. Hamilton is a script that doesn't have a lot of subtext. It really wears its heart on its sleeve. That's something I say in my pre-show notes. Trust the text. And this is one of those moments where I really, really worked. It probably wasn't until halfway through my run with that show that I finally got to fit that in. He says, look around, Eliza. It's important to know she doesn't. She doesn't look around. She's not having it. She's standing by his side, and that's it. And then a little bit later, Angelica is singing, and she says, they are standing in the garden, Alexander by Eliza's side. She takes his hand, and she does. She doesn't look at him. Every Eliza and Hamilton plays it a little differently, but for the most part, she's not looking at him. You just see their fingers, her fingers kind of search for his, and she takes his hand. And then Eliza says, it's quiet uptown. The stage direction after she sings It's Quiet Uptown is literally Hamilton shatters. And it's so beautiful. It says exactly what he is doing. He does shatter because he's finally getting that human touch, that compassion from his wife. They are going to make it. And that's when the company, it's the very end of the song, and that's when the company is singing Forgiveness, Can You Imagine? And one of my patrons had told me on a previous show, they were like, hey, once a chorus starts coming back up again, and we already know what the words are going to be, it's okay to talk over them. And so I really took their words to heart, and I said, okay, we've heard this stanza of the Forgiveness, Can You Imagine? If you see him walking in the street, walking by your side. And so I chose that moment to say, Hamilton looks down at their hands, hangs his head, and slowly shakes it, shoulders hunched. He pulls her hand close and kisses it. And then the very final moment of that stanza says they are going through the unimaginable, and Eliza takes his arm, and the couple turn and walk off together. And then we go immediately into the election of 1800, which is way more fast paced, and poor Madison is sobbing into his hanky, which luckily he does that very vocally too, where, can we get back to politics, please? It's just one of the most beautiful moments to me, that you've got this little thing where she won't hold his hand, and then she finally does. And it takes 2 songs for her to finally hold his hand. And I wish that we could have that moment be brought out more in versions of the show that exist. So those are my 3 moments where it's like, man, I wish that I could really talk about Hamilton in more depth, but that the script just doesn't allow it.
What do you think, Melody? Is that consistent with your experience?
Well, I just was sitting here so fascinated, literally, like, as you were talking, Bridget, leaning into my chair, and at one moment had my hand on my heart when you were talking about all this, because your passion just came through so much about it. And so I got to kind of see it again through what you were just describing so eloquently. And I found when I first saw Hamilton, I really had, because it is so fast paced and so incredibly visual, like a lot of those things that you were saying, I miss them. So it was a little tricky at first to kind of have to really work to understand all the moving parts. But with that, my question for you is, when it comes to that, because like even with the deep affection that he had for Angelica, and then with her sister, it's just that battle even in itself, that I don't know, the battle of the hearts right there was just so hard to grasp when it's kind of other places.
Yeah. Visually, one of those moments really is when Angelica turns on the revolve away. She's going to go marry somebody else. And that pregnant Eliza comes on in and she takes the hand right away. So yeah, they have such a visual relationship.
Yes. And when you were describing that, for me, like, that's so fascinating to me, is when you are looking at something that's so visual and you're playing it out, is knowing when you're looking at it what to describe. Like, you do get the script, but then you do write your own script with it.
Yes, Hamilton is one of those shows where, since it is sung through, it'll follow the same pacing and rhythm. And so up on my computer right now, I've got my entire PDF script all marked up in red, even with stage directions to myself, like, you better say this fast, because this only has about 2 seconds versus some other ones where I can pace it with the action because there's nothing verbal happening during it. So yeah, Hamilton, I have 100% scripted out to the word.
That's so amazing.
Yeah.
Because like when I said, it was very hard. I didn't do pre-show notes. I didn't do that prior. And I think that would have made a lot of difference to not feeling like I wanted to be caught up in the moment of what was going on. So that is a good thing to know for next time.
I really liked the vocal eyes. Audio description pre-show notes for live theater are a little bit more, I think in America, we tend to be really, really factual, and they can be a little, I guess, clippy sounding then. And theirs just, it reads beautifully. I would definitely recommend check it out before you see Hamilton again.
Oh, I'm definitely going to for sure.
Most live theater too is going to give you 15 minutes pre-show. Once we get back to live theater, if you arrive 15 minutes prior to the show, almost guaranteed your audio describer is going to give you that background for every show you see.
Yes. And I've had that before in another show that I've saw, and that really helps. But the other area that you touched on was not only the clips go so quick, as you said, you're in this great, amazing scene, and then you move into another scene that's totally flipped. So we're going back from this hurt love situation to, can we get back to politics, please? So it's just like almost, whiplash in a sense. So
yes. And as a describer, you're trying not to get bogged down with the emotion of it. It's kind of insane, some of the things you can describe with zero emotion, because you're like, I've seen it and it's not my place to have emotion in my voice when this happens. I can do the ending of Miss Saigon straight faced. It's cool. I couldn't do it straight faced the first time I saw it by any means. It does take some practice to be like, it doesn't matter that Philip has just died. It's cool.
No, I mean, it is. It's just like when, I go to the movies, because it can really take you out of the element too. If it's not the right tone or it's not matched. It's almost like a cadence or a dance. It's almost.
Yes. When I do the big Broadway musicals for Broadway in Chicago, I'm very thankful that I'm 9 times out of 10, I'm in my own booth or my own room. It's not like a storefront theater where I'm sitting in the house, because absolutely on a musical, I am moving all over the place in my chair, keeping the rhythm of a show. Yeah. So that I am able to anticipate where they are. It would always kind of trip me up the first time I would get, a new Aaron Burr or a new Hamilton in there, because every cast change and every alternate is fantastic, but they all have kind of their own little tweak to it. And so it would always throw me, and I always got really excited when it's like, okay, good, this is going to be the alternate that I'll see. Probably he'll be on sporadically for the next 5 months. Like, good, I can get what this guy is about. Because definitely I am rocking in my chair, I am moving, I'm singing along in my head, trying to make sure it doesn't come out on the microphone. Yeah, you've really got to stay with what their pace is.
Well, yeah, you've got to stay in the pace, but you also have to stay in the moment, which is fascinating for me to hear you, that you're in your booth, moving around your seat. Like, even when you're saying that, I'm like, my gosh, this is like really exciting. Like, you're just, you're just, and doing it live must have such challenges with that, because it's not, you can retake that.
Yes. And that's where something that I do love, when in doubt, you just shut up. So if you're like, something feels different about this performance, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get something in, I would just shut up. If I couldn't get into somebody's rhythm, if they were an alternate or something, there were definitely times where I would be quiet, because Hamilton is so, there's so many male voices in Hamilton.
Yes.
It definitely took me probably until a year into the 3-year run to really feel out, where did I need to be saying, this is Burr? Maybe you haven't heard him for 2 songs. And visually, I know him because, so everybody in Hamilton is kind of color coded. Aaron Burr's always going to be in a purple, and then at the very end, he's all in black for the most part. And so what I loved is Hamilton was one of those shows where you need to do pre-show notes, and then I'm also doing intermission notes to let you know, because, there's double casting that happens. And this is where that person is now, like, this is what they now look like, because you're going to hear their voice. You're going to know their voice. You've got to know that those characters were doubled up and everything. And so, but it's like visually, you can start to know who they are just because they're color coded. They're going to wear, Hamilton in the second act only wears green for the most part. And it was very interesting in doing the run for 3 years. The cameras got upgraded greatly. So whereas I had been really relying on voices because I was seeing almost blobs of light on my screen, I remember the day that I started to see it in HD, and I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know he took his hair down in the second act. Like, that's new.
Yeah.
Like, I had no idea, because I had only been seeing it on a poor quality video feed, because I'd seen it live enough. I saw the show maybe 4 times live, being able to take notes from a private box and everything before I ever called it for the first time. But then after that, for the most part, it was only ever seeing it from a live video feed. So the day that we got HD was like, me and the technicians were just rejoicing for how much cooler it suddenly was.
I'm so glad you brought that up. I felt like you were like reading my mind, because that's one of the things that I did struggle with. It is a male dominant voices, and it is difficult to follow who's speaking. And I felt myself thinking, okay, who is that? Or asking who that was, and what did he say, and what else is going on? So yes, that was definitely like a voice tennis match for me. So yes.
Yeah. And so there were definitely times where I was definitely take our shot, that when they're all singing about, like, I'm not throwing away my shot. And it's like, okay, I know that Lafayette speaks with a French accent, but let's say Lafayette again. Let's say Mulligan again. And when you do introduce a character's name kind of repeatedly like that, I think it helps. It'll kind of step on their phrasing a little bit. But to me, I'm like, you need to know that Mulligan is the one that just said, yo, I'm a tailor's apprentice. Because otherwise you're like, who is this dude?
Yes, exactly.
And so I that song particularly, I would probably reintroduce those guys, I think, twice, even after I'd already said he sits at a table with these 3 guys. Hamilton is definitely a show where I did not wait for a character to be introduced by name. I said their name immediately, because there's not time for an audience member to catch up to wait for that character to be introduced. And also, thank God, for the most part, they all said their own names right when they first appeared.
Mm-hmm. But I did find that to be a little tricky. And the other thing too, like, I love what you're saying, is talking about, like, I never would have known that they're different outfits and being color coded. And I don't think sometimes when there's so much visually that in the art that is theater, and also in the, any entertainment, there's so much that is happening visually, and then being able to try to pick those parts. I just have mad respect for your passion and for what you do, because it would probably be very difficult. I mean, I can sense what it is now that you're saying, and it's coming like to me, because, I lost my eyesight as an adult. So I can still visually picture it, but it's still, it takes a while to pick up the cues and what's happening. And I still feel like, I'm there. And the fact that there's such like good quality audio description out there now that's happening, it's really just makes such a huge difference and why it's so important.
Yeah. And that's something I love about describing for live theater is that you are meeting your audience. And so if you tell us, like, I definitely have a visual vocabulary, it's like, well, then cool. I might describe this totally differently because especially with dance, it's like different people have different visual vocabularies. And so it's so fun to be able to tailor things just a little bit more to people. It's the same, like if you're describing dance to a dancer versus describing dance to a layman, you're like, oh, okay, well, cool. I definitely have to do way more research then because I'm not a dancer, but I need to know what are they doing. And that's something I do think that the vocalized description, the introductory notes for Hamilton, they do a beautiful job of describing what the dance is going to be for Hamilton. That it is very hip hop based. It's very street dance based. Like in the, I'm not throwing away my shot. That part, I've got written, the men move in unison with boxer-like movements, punching the air and half squats. Burr observes from the side, not joining in. Because until you're describing it, you don't really make sense of some of the visuals that you're seeing. Aaron Burr is around the periphery of all these scenes. Even scenes he's not necessarily talking in, you'll just kind of realize he's back in the shadowy recess of the stage. He's, watching from the gallery on the second level, or he's there in a doorway, and you just don't even realize it until you are trying to verbally describe to somebody what the show is. And then you're like, dude, Burr's on stage right here. And so to me, it's very important in that one, because that's where Lawrence, Mulligan, and Lafayette all meet Hamilton. And Aaron Burr does stay on the side. He's there. But to me, it's very important that as a audience member, he's not joining in. He is not part of this. I'm not throwing away my shot because he's holding on to his shot. He's a very cautious man. And something that I love doing Broadway and Chicago, like Broadway shows, because the tours and everything, there's so much ancillary material you can find to really feed into your audio description. So there's some fantastic interviews with Andy Blankenbuehler, who is the choreographer for Hamilton. And he talks a lot about so much of the dance of the show is very literal. It's very related to what the songs are saying. They're doing military, like stylized military drills. They're twirling rifles and everything. But except Aaron Burr's numbers, they are really acting as the subconscious to Aaron Burr. I absolutely love Burr's song where he says, I am inimitable, I am an original. That whole song, he is really, wait for it, he is really working at the beginning of his relationship with Hamilton to figure it out. And there's the company is kind of around him on the sides, but there are 4 chairs at the corner of the stage. And there's somebody's just watching him. A company member is just watching him. And that's really the dancers for Aaron Burr really act like his subconscious. And so when he really, they're just watching him for the wait for it. But then at the end, when he is busting loose saying, I want to be in the room where it happens, Aaron Burr, his dancing gets increasingly more frantic and more open. And you're just like, whoa, I've only been seeing you as a straight up and down character this whole time. Aaron Burr has some incredible posture. It is incredible to watch him. And he starts losing it. And suddenly he's kicking his leg and he's got his arms are flailing out. And all of the company is around him dancing with that same kind of wild abandon. And I think Aaron Burr's song is matching it, that he's vocally matching it, but it's quite something to see visually, him just lose it. He wants to be in the room where that happens. And that really feeds into him then being like, hey, I am turning a new leaf and I am running and I am going to say that I'm running for president and that I'm going to take a stand on something because I've learned that from you, Hamilton. Aaron Burr's character is where the company of dancers really break. You really see them become something that is not just following along and adding like another layer, a visual layer to the songs. It's making commentary on the song. And that's something that 100% I could never really figure out how to get into words within the breaths allotted for the description.
Well, I could totally see why, because, you have like, again, I was kind of leaning in when you were saying that, like we were on this ride together. You're describing that. The best thing that kept coming into my mind when I was thinking about that, because that's, again, something that I missed. I've got to go watch this again, like right straight away, is that because it just reminds me almost like a predator, like not just looking and observing, but there's just like all this silent chaos like that's going on that so adds to the total effect of it that that can get lost in translation. It almost gives a different light to it, a different intensity. That part I was literally just like leaning and think, oh my gosh, like, because I didn't realize that he was there the whole time and that he's observing, and you don't realize, and then he's just like, yeah. And I think we all, like, in our lives have moments like that, right? Just in our own personal lives where we're observing and we want to step in. It's like, do I get in the water? Do I not? Do I go? Do I not? And you're like, oh, screw it, I'm going. Like, and I'm going with reckless abandonment, like you said. And that's just, yeah, that's awesome.
And when Burr tells Hamilton, like, and I learned that from you, and that's kind of what sparks their duel and everything.
Well, yeah, but
is that he has been learning. He's been watching Hamilton this whole time, trying to figure out, why am I not as courageous as this man? And I want to be this man. And he is like this creepy lion, just kind of stalking the outside of the stage, trying to figure out how to get into the ring. I absolutely love the character of Aaron Burr, because when he just loses it in the room where it happened, you're just like, there, you see, man, we knew you had it in you because we saw and wait for it that you had it in you. That's that was your big act one moment. And then to have him just really like lose it, you're like, thank God, finally you're going to live up to your potential. And then nothing goes the way it should have. Like, just nothing.
Well, we have no experience with that this year, do we? No, but I think it really does add so much to the element of that, because when they do that, the duel, it's like, okay, they're dueling. But now to know this, it's like, it makes it lighter. Something you said previously, I want to go back to just real quick, when you're saying about theater versus movies, like, do you get the chance to talk to your audience, to have that chance to talk about vocabulary?
Funnily enough, that just came up in like an online conversation that I was seeing on Facebook today, where they were saying, why can't we do pre-show notes on a movie? So when I do educational work, like I'll describe films for a student's classwork for a university or something, I'll describe a couple beats of those opening credits for something. And then I will say audio introduction as the credits continue. And I will try to fit in as much context as I can into that time allotted. And that's something that I can do on educational films, because it is for a select audience. It's a chosen audience. It doesn't really exist for, just more of like a blanket audience, the general audience. But I do think that should be brought up for future audio description. To me, I don't think that you should have to look outside of, like, as much as I love that Vocalize put up their introductory notes for Hamilton, the patron should not have to go elsewhere to find all of the context they need to enjoy something. And so I do think it would be very cool if you could start to add things like that. Or even if it was, a link that was just always there every time an audio described video was around, that always existed, that audio introduction always existed. But I do put it in for my educational work.
That would be really incredible. But when you're in the theater, because I know it's so different from what you're talking about, it almost sounds like you're getting a major workout too when you're there in the theater. But if, like, I were to come into the theater and describing, if we're in a situation where we are, when we do get back to that, but with the vocabulary for theater, is that something that you do speak with? Do you have that opportunity to be like, if it?
Yeah. So, all of my live theater description comes from the Chicago theater world. And so speaking just like with how we do it in Chicago, the thing that I love is that Broadway in Chicago is one of the few commercial enterprises for theater in Chicago. For the most part, everybody else is a nonprofit. And so as a commercial collective, Broadway in Chicago is unique in the fact that they will do audio description on demand. So they have a patron contact them and say, I want to see Hamilton on this date. They buy a ticket. Broadway in Chicago comes to me and says, hey, can you do audio description for this one, like solely this one person on this date? And I'm like, yep, I'm there. And so I have the opportunity to, if I can, meet them ahead of time if they've arrived early and
That
say,
is
hey,
awesome.
I'm Bridget, I'm your audio describer today. And I'll know where they're seated. So that's really important. I know if they have a service animal, because sometimes people with service animals are going to want to know there's a lot of fighting in this. They might want to know that, hey, in Act 2, there's going to be a verbal fight that might put your animal on edge. I need to know if you're seated in the orchestra, because I want you to know that confetti is going to rain down on you. And I might bring that up sooner rather than later, because I don't want you to be smacked in the face with confetti and be like, oh my God, what was that? That'd be so alarming. And so for those commercial houses, that is a very unique thing that I'm literally tailoring it to that one person. And that's where I've gotten some of my best feedback. Their case in point, there was a patron that we were doing Wicked, and she was like, you're using pronouns way too much. And it hadn't dawned on me. In my head, it was very clear because I'm talking she because Elphaba's singing. I'm saying she when Galinda's singing. But you're right. How do you know what she I'm referring to?
Mhm.
I could be a header behind the song. And so that was really great to be able to get immediate feedback from the patrons. For the most part, though, in Chicago, everybody is a nonprofit, and you will schedule 1 or 2 performances dedicated to audio description or dedicated to captioning, ASL and everything. And for those, 9 times out of 10, we're doing a touch tour pre-show. So the audience that is wanting to use it, and I'm a big advocate for opening it up to everybody who doesn't want to talk to the actors pre-show, who doesn't want to touch costumes and get to walk the stage. Like, touch tours to me are just the way that live theater should be done. And they're so fascinating. Even like the Lyric Opera of Chicago, when I saw M. Butterfly there was a private group of like 5 of us that were there for the audio description of the show, and we're ushered backstage. A musician will come out and play a theme for us and really orient us to the music. And that, if there's a weird instrument that you're going to hear during the show, they're going to play it for you. You get to touch some of the props. I really like on the kind of, the more non-union houses, I, as an audio describer, can get up on the stage and I can describe the set to you, literally walking the stage, so that people are able to hear my voice from the different areas, so that you can auditorily know, oh, that door is all the way back there. And, that just can really just help enrich everything so that you don't have to think about it later when you're actually trying to enjoy the performance. I really want touch tours everybody should do touch tours for live theater.
That is amazing, and I totally second that.
Yeah.
Who do we need to call?
To me, a lot of it is up to the audio describer to advocate for it.
Yes.
Because when you do a touch tour, you're also getting the actors out there. So you're hearing the actors talk in their voices to you. I love hearing actors describe themselves. We do usually have like a little sheet that they can follow along, so that they can be a little more objective about themselves.
Mhm.
But it's so great. Like pre-show, you're able to hear what they sound like. If they talk in a dialect, you're able to hear that dialect so that you can be prepared for, like in the musical Come From Away, one of my favorite musicals ever. It's a musical about 9/12, not 9/11. It's about 9/12. And there's 2 main groups. There's the mainlanders and there's the Newfoundlanders.
Mhm.
And they could not sound more different from each other. And in those pre-show notes, because it was a union, it's a touring production, I have found a clip of it on YouTube so that I could play just a snippet of it on my pre-show notes to be like, hey guys, this is what it's going to sound like. Because it's jarring if you haven't heard the Newfoundlanders talk before. And so I appreciate pre-show notes for things like that I really want to set somebody up for success and not take them 5 minutes to be like, I don't understand what's going on here. Somebody just keeps talking weird. Yeah.
No, I was going to say, Bridget, you do more than set up for success. That is giving a total amazing experience. That would be like walking out of the theater, having that kind of high you do after you've seen a really good show. You have that experience. You can walk out. You can have that feeling. It's just not about seeing it. It's the feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And I truly believe that theater and entertainment, that's what people go for the most,
Mm-hmm.
is getting to the heart of your work more than
Yeah.
just the visual aspects of it.
Yes. So the touch tour, the thing I like is that what I really push for is inviting other audiences. This isn't just for people who are blind or low vision. think about people on the spectrum. They want to be introduced slowly into that space, maybe.
Right.
Maybe they have sensory processing disorder, and it would really help for them to see what the lights on the stage are going to be in advance, feel that costume, see the stage, know any surprises that might be coming out. I did a fantastic show for a small theater. We were doing the Pillow Man, and they were using puppets to help tell the story, and they were phenomenal. And the puppets, though, they were made out of found objects, and so they had a weird sound. And it's like, this is so great that we can do this pre-show, and so the audience isn't like, what in the hell is that crinkle? What is that crinkle? And it's like, it's a puppet made of plastic sheeting. That's what that is. Like,
yes, that would throw me.
Yeah, just the more people you can involve in those pre-show, now suddenly you've got the actors that are all knowing what audio description is. They can advocate for it. You've got all of these other audiences. I did once a touch tour for people that absolutely didn't understand what a touch tour was. They weren't the target audience, but I'm like, hey, is this making it so much better for you? And they were like, yeah, this is one of our, we're slowly being introduced to theater right now. And this is really cool that we just got our own personal introduction to the show. And I was like, thank you. Cool. Now, please tell everybody why this was so cool and that it was, that it's audio description. You don't need to just be, I have plenty of patrons that they're not seeing the stage. They might just see shapes or something. They don't necessarily listen to me during the show because they're like, no, I can picture this well enough in my head, but they absolutely come to the touch tour so that they know they're picturing, they've got the general idea right. So that they can then just enjoy it. They don't need me talking in their ear. And it's like, hey, this is not personal to me. That's cool. I'm just excited you're here. And that you still feel like theater is here for you because it is, and we want it to be here for every audience. And so, I would love touch tours to be seen as more than just, this is a service for blind or low vision patrons. Everybody.
Well, no, and I can see, and I love what you talked about, like it is inclusion and it's bringing other people and building awareness, which is so critical, right? So it's like, and having the actors and actresses and then the directors, and then you have these people that write these beautiful scripts and these beautiful plays, and and then if you have someone who's like, okay, he walked out, he's going back, it's going to do nothing but enhance what you're working on.
Yeah.
No, I love it. This has been so incredible. I have learned so much, and I cannot wait to go back and watch Hamilton. And then also I've been writing down the other ones that you've talked about too. I need to go see those.
There's a lot of good theater if people can just take that extra step to make it accessible. Shout out to Steppenwolf Theater Company. They're based in Chicago. They have done a 180 and they have switched to virtual platform right now. They can't do live performance. And all of their virtual programs that they're putting on right now, they are absolutely committed to having ASL. They're having audio description on them. They're having the captions so that they're not hiding that information either. It's right there on the show page. And so I'm really excited to see that with the pandemic, everybody is starting to figure out, not even starting, we've all figured out where we're landing on this now. And so everybody is saying, great, all of those access services that I was doing live, I figured out how to do them for virtual and we're doing them. So I'm hoping that is a trend that just keeps on going, that we don't forget our virtual audiences when we do return to live theater.
No, I think that's so important. And I don't think it will. I think people have kind of come to understand. I mean, and the silver lining of this, what we've all been through is there's been, a light shone, and like what we can do, what we're capable of, and who we do need to be reaching and how we can. I don't think that things will go back to the way they were. And I think it's going to be better in many aspects of that.
I hope.
For sure. And I'm going to second that shout out to them. Thanks. That's really awesome. Anybody who's going to broadcast that and make it known that there are different audiences out there. Everyone's not cut from, we're all people at the end of the day, and we're not cookie cutters. And as a matter of fact, just another point that you're saying, I'm going to bring up is, I have a 10-year-old son, and I don't even need to be watching something and he's got audio description on, because he just tells me it helps him concentrate better.
Yes.
I mean, he prefers to have it on. It's just crazy.
It reinforces visuals. It reinforces that, there's more vocabulary that you're learning.
Right.
And then, audio description on, suddenly that movie is a podcast now.
Yes.
And you can walk all around. I absolutely adore captions because I don't like wearing headphones. Even right now, like I'm wearing a one-eared headphone. I hate headphones. And I love having captions on. And it's also just reinforcing visually for me, it's reinforcing the concepts that I'm hearing about. And it's like, oh, okay, that was the word you said, that I've never heard that term before. And it's just all of these access and inclusion services just open up worlds for everybody, whether they realize it or not.
It's true. And I mean, again, just to piggyback, you said podcasting. Well, I mean, hey, you're in your car and you're stuck in traffic, or it's just there. It's like you've turned it into an audiobook of some sort too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. This has been so incredible. I have learned so much hanging out with you today.
Awesome. I could talk about Hamilton for days.
I know. You'll probably be on here for 4 hours, and I don't think people want to do it.
Oh, yeah. I'm sitting here looking at the script, and it's like, oh, but we could talk about this for a moment.
Yes, well, we will. Maybe we'll do a round 2.
Well, this has been wonderful. Thanks so much for both of you and opening up and talking Hamilton and also getting into the pre-show for live and virtual. And this is just great. Thank you both for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you.